nice to find out what your opinion is on the other three,
I think,
and which would be more most
as a
accurate.
matter of economics, the income equivalence models to me make no sense. Because they rest on unacceptably stringent assumptions. And I'm not the only one to say that. There's the economic literature essentially says that. And I can show you what I'm referring to in a moment. Where it is. Well, I thought I had it here, but it doesn't seem to be here. Oh, no. What?
There's some more papers on the floor.
No, that's not it either. So, when we take a break, I'll look for it.
Thank you, sir.
And so I cannot accept I think the economics of the income equivalence models in both its varieties are based on unacceptably stringent assumptions. The USDA models at least make an attempt to look at the data, but they're based on inappropriate assumptions too. They're based on some sort of ideal circumstances as opposed to actual circumstances. The second bedroom issue and the nutritious diet issue and the dividing transportation costs on a per capita basis. So I think that's preferable as an approach, but not the way it's done.
Thank you.
Okay, let's, we're moving right along. Let's go to the next slide. Remember, economic costs include imputed costs. And there are two relevant questions which I would have you consider. First is whether imputed costs should be part of child support awards. Yes, some level of imputed costs should be included with full economic costs. But is that what child support awards are designed to compensate? That's a policy question for you to decide, not for me. That's my second thing. Whether child support payments should cover opportunity costs as opposed to be limited to monetary costs. Because remember, opportunity costs are not out-of-pocket costs. It's the cost of the den. Should child support awards compensate the custodial parent for the loss of the den? That's a policy issue, not an economic issue. And the second is, how do we measure these imputed costs? And I think it can only be done by making strong and basically arbitrary assumptions.
Matt, I have a question.
Sure. Sure.
On the last statement that, or the one prior to what you just said, is that child support is, should child support compensate the custodial parent for the loss of the den? But isn't what the policy question really is does the custodial parent and the non-custodial parent each have the opportunity to have a den for
Fair
the
enough.
child?
Fair enough. Fair enough. That's another way of putting it, and I think that's equally valid.
And that's a different question.
It is a different question, and it's equally valid, and that's a policy issue, not an economic one. So, however you put it, I'm okay with that. I mean, besides, it's not my decision as an economist. I might have some view as a policymaker, but that's not economics. The real issue is we don't know how to measure these imputed costs accurately. And we just don't know how to measure it. We can only do so by making arbitrary assumptions. The arbitrary assumption in income equivalence, the primary one, is that utility functions or preferences don't change in the presence of children, even though we all know they do. The primary arbitrary assumption in the USDA numbers is that in the presence of a child, the household necessarily goes out and gets a second bedroom, a separate bedroom. It's not the way people behave. Both assumptions are arbitrary and lead to the results that are obtained. My approach is also incorrect, because I say I don't know how to measure these opportunity costs, so I'll forget about them. Right? That's also wrong. I don't want to tell you it's not. So the issue is, which poison do you take? And I think it depends on the numbers. If you said that my results are too small because they ignore opportunity costs, I would agree with that. But I don't think they rise to the level that I report. And how to make that judgment, I don't know. What do you think about that? You know, about the three models. Now we've gotten to the three models. Let's get some discussion. Jody, what do you think? What do you think about them?
I need to look more at the census survey because I want to understand what they asked and how they asked it. I was commenting at the break that I tried it various times, gotten all confused about having a budget. And I leave Target and I leave with groceries. I leave with cleaning supplies. I leave with a birthday gift for one of my kids to give one of their friends. I leave with a DVD and I leave with a sweatshirt. Okay, so do I need to sit down with that receipt and say this much is food and this much is house related and this was this is home entertainment, this is, nobody's going to do that. So I mean, how on earth can you get numbers that you can even begin to think, we're acting like these are so accurate, God's truth, we know exactly what people spend and this is what we should base the world on. It's a survey and people fill it out the best they can.
Agreed. It's the only numbers we have.
I understand that.
And my defense is that nobody has,
Right.
my numbers aren't any worse than anybody else's.
Right.
They're the same.
And I don't have any better ones to give.
And I don't have it, so the issue is, what do we do when invariably the data is not perfect, but it's the best data we have, and so we use it.
Right, but if it's off by a lot in either direction, it can make a big difference.
It can. So we have to build into our analyses some understanding that there's errors in these data. I accept that. And I wish I had a better answer to you. But I don't want to go beyond what I think I can do.
Right.
Jimmy?
From what I'm hearing, and I just want to make sure I get the correct understanding. This boils down to how much we tend to value opportunity cost and at what level we'd like to assign a value to them at. From everything you've said today, we kind of get back to the fact that each one of us, our own value system as to how we spend our money, each one of us believe that we maybe have foregone an opportunity in order to pursue another one, and that relates to raising children. But the bottom line is that what you're saying, it's difficult to calculate those opportunity costs, and it's no perfect method in doing so. And so this task force will be tasked with the fact that we will have to decide as a group how much value to assign to opportunity costs and what they need within the scope of the awards and things that we're trying to do. I think that's what I take away from that. Do you have any feedback from that?
No, I think that's right. I think that's right. What I've given you is a floor.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that the floor doesn't have to include these opportunity costs, but the way it's done now is excessive. I think that's my bottom line. And it's tough, I think, for people to disagree, at least as a matter of economics, not as a matter of policy. Jason?
I think most states use the USDA model or the income equivalence model.
Most states use the income equivalence.
And I think the proof of the errors in those models is out there in unpaid and back child support. You can make the assumption that everybody that's not paying child support is doing so on purpose. I don't think that that is necessarily true. I'm sure there are some cases. But I think the amount, it's over $100 billion now in back child support that's owed. I think it's more than likely because some of the numbers and the models used to set child support orders set them at such a high level that non-custodial parents can't pay because it's not true in reality based on their income and the costs of that child.
You make the suggestion in your literature, and I'm not sure how soon we'll get to that point, but you make the suggestion that it does, and to Jason's point, becomes an economic asset to a parent. When
I'll
those-
get to that. I mean, I promise to get to that. Because to the extent that child support awards exceed the true opportunity cost of raising children, the economic costs, including the opportunity cost, it creates an asset to have the child. Well, let me handle that a little bit later. Right? Yes.
This is Jeff. Just for the just a comment, I guess. So what I'm taking away a little bit here is from your perspective, the USDA and the Rothbard and the other methods estimate too high the cost of raising a child. Your method, by your own admission, is probably too low. And the answer is probably somewhere in the middle. But the struggle for me is, how do we find data, or how do we get to a number that's different when it takes an economist years to come up with an alternative? So to me, that's just kind of my thought is, how could we do that? And I don't know if I'm right on that. That's just how I'm thinking as I listen to
I think
you.
you're right. Because there are opportunity costs, and we don't know how to measure it. And I can imagine my numbers being increased by some reasonable percentage. I'm not going to mention the number.
Yeah.
But not to the percentages that I observe. So I guess that's my general feeling.
Makes
And
sense.
we know it's excessive because of a little bit of what, let me show you one other number.
Yeah.
All right, first, let's go to the next one. First of all, we went to this base case and we found child support guidelines numbers, and they are what they are. As you can see, you can look at the support guidelines, you can look at my incremental numbers, and you can look at the US FDA numbers, USDA numbers, right? Your numbers are less than the USDA estimates, but they're substantially higher than my own. I mean, unless we made some mistakes, that's what we found on the website. So maybe that's the ballpark in which you're working. Right? Any questions about that? I mean, these are I'm just repeating the numbers I had before.
There was a hand in the audience earlier, sir, do you still have a question?
It's kind of.
Okay, thank you.
All right, let's go on. Let's go to the next one. All right. And let me get back to Jimmy's question. What are the implications of awards which exceed the direct costs of raising children? And you can see, when awards provide are greater than custody, child parenting becomes a financial asset. That's just the way it is. And then the award structure provides a monetary incentive to gain maximum parenting time, even apart from everything else. Because the custodial parent benefits from the extent to which the award exceeds the costs. And it creates resentment in the obligor whose payments from this asset. And you can, and then I have a chart from the most recent federal report. Let's go on to the next one. That's just a Xerox of the federal report from Minnesota. And you can see that the report provides collecting regular on-time payments is somewhere in the low 70%, under 3/4. And I ask you whether that's related to the level of awards. That's a question, not an answer. Whether or not this number, which seems low to me, is in some sense related to the fact that award levels may exceed the costs of raising children, including opportunity costs.
This is Julie
Okay.
Erickson with the department again. I guess my question is, we've just spent the morning talking about how difficult it is to actually figure out what the numbers are
Right.
to raise a child. So then when I see this next slide that talks about when the award exceeds that amount, and talking about custody then becoming a financial asset, and I certainly don't disagree with that statement, I just have a hard time when we don't know what that number, I mean, to me it seems like that number is gonna change for lots of different, it's the perception, right? It's more of the perception than the actual cost of what it is.
Let's go back 2 slides ago to the table about Minnesota. That one, all right? I certainly agree that my numbers, by ignoring opportunity costs, because I don't know how to measure it, are probably too low. But they're nothing like the USDA numbers. And let's look at the Minnesota guidelines numbers. Maybe they're too high.
Yeah, and I understand that. I guess I'm going by your first bullet here on this slide that says when support awards exceed direct costs of raising children.
Right.
And that's what I'm trying to get at. I don't feel like we have that number. I don't feel like we know what the number of raising a child is.
Of course you're right. It's more than 342. It's more than 3421 for the body, but it's less than 10,000.
Lisa?
And just so I'm clear as to kind of how this would extrapolate, and I think this may, I'm sorry, I didn't say my name, this is Lisa. I think this may be why you're saying it's wrong and that it's too low, is that if you don't include the opportunity costs, in essence, then one parent ends up bearing all of the opportunity costs.
Bearing the opportunity cost. That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct. So, and it's the den. Think back to the den. Then it's the parent which has the child loses the den.
But also, wouldn't it, and just kind of a couple of the hypotheticals we've talked about this morning, where we talk about, let's say there's a couple that doesn't increase their income when they have a child,
You mean income or expenditures?
income.
So
They
the-
don't increase their
The
income,
income stays the same,
and they have a food cost of $100 a month,
right?
and that doesn't increase because they don't have any extra money when they have that child.
Right?
And so if you have that same $100, then in that situation, there would be no child support award because that child didn't cost you anything, even though we would say.
Oh, well, now, hold on. They didn't charge, if they had food without parents, without child is $100, and food cost with child is still $100?
Yes, but some of that $100 is now for the child, and that's the difference in choosing to spend
Less
money
quality
on
food, that's right,
that
that's
kind of
Kamala's
thing, or
point.
the restaurant, or
Right.
things like that, where that's all at 100% opportunity cost, not any incremental cost.
Correct.
And so that's the piece we can't measure, but we would be saying there's no additional cost to raising a child, and that's not accurate.
That's right.
Okay.
The additional cost is not going to a restaurant.
I think, sorry, Lisa, I
No,
think
I'm finished.
in that respect, to your very point, is, and to Julie, your question as well, that's X, right? The actual assignment of value to opportunity cost is something we have yet to define within the group. So, to his point, right, he's saying our number is somewhere in the middle, but it's definitely, that cost of raising a child definitely isn't as high as 10,000 and as low as 7,000. But we can't decide on what opportunity cost is because each of us have a different value system in terms of what we believe that means to somebody. So we'll have to figure out a way, unfortunately, between the group to figure out how to divide that up or how to mathematically come to some agreement with that. He can't give us that information because he's not dealing with opportunity cost in his models.
That's a fair statement, Jim. I know.
Jason, did you have a,
Yeah,
and then Pamela?
just a quick question about the data that's up there in the tables. And the incremental costs and the USDA estimates, childcare is included in those? In those costs?
Childcare and education, yes.
So, when we look at the Minnesota support guidelines and those numbers there, in the Minnesota support guidelines, childcare is separated out. And I'm not sure if you,
I didn't know that.
so in reality, the Minnesota support guidelines that we currently have are higher than what you were showing on there.
Okay, well, I
Am
stand
I
corrected
right?
then.
It depends upon the stage of life of the child. If they're little people, yes, you're correct. If it's the 17-year-old, there would be no child care.
Right, but these numbers are based off of an overall average of 18 years.
For the incremental cost, that is correct.
I'm trying to compare apples to apples, and so, we do see that in Minnesota currently, according to that chart, it is less than the USDA, but I don't think it's that much less. I think it's actually whatever that difference is. So it might be like $8,000
5, 10 minutes.
in the low income range.
And you're right, and I think that that's dependent truly on the age of the child.
Right. These are numbers for over 18 years, the average.
Pamela and then Jeff.
Well, I was just looking back to the Rothbard model, which is the income equivalence, correct? And the numbers, although the USDA estimates are much higher, the Rothbard estimates are very close to the Minnesota, is what I'm looking at, is what I'm seeing. And I just wanted to point that out, basically, that if we could compare, the Rothbard is probably between the incremental of the USDA and very, very near the Minnesota support guidelines. So
I noticed that
Minnesota
too,
doesn't- yeah.
and I wondered, because in principle, Minnesota guidelines are based on the USDA, but it appears that they're closer to the Rothbard estimate.
Yes.
Can you explain that?
Yes, because it came, the guidelines were a function of negotiation in the House and the Senate. and with regard to how the numbers were put together. And Jeff, you might want to, explain that a bit more. I don't know if you can, but because that's from the old days, and my mind isn't. But that was my understanding, is that.
So it really relied on the Rothbard, even though in principle it relies on USDA. Is that what
No,
you're saying?
it was sort of a mashup of the two, I think.
Fair enough.
And I think that that's what occurred, and that's what I'm thinking is possible for this task force to take a look at. I don't think we have to be locked into one model specifically, but it could be potentially a mashup of the different models.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Tara, do you have a response
I just
on
have a
this?
clarifying question to ask on your chart here. Did you pull these numbers from the statute, or did you use the online calculator
I
and
think we
input?
use the online calculator.
And did you
My
take
colleague
it?
did this, so I didn't do this personally. So
Okay, so I mean, it's possible then that the child care was included in it if you put an average number into the calculator? Not
since
sure.
it was
Okay,
done by
Tara?
my colleague, I don't really remember.
Okay, thank you.
I'm Amy Anderson. I ran the number and verified that that does not include child care for one child in the support number.
Thank you, Amy.
We had Jeff's hand up and Jason's hand up.
I just wanted to point out, I wish I could explain it, but I wasn't with the department the last time this happened, so I can't speak to whatever negotiations might have taken place. What I wanted to say is what makes this even more complicated for us is the example that you're using is 100% of the income to one parent and 100% of the time to the other parent. And I just don't know how often that happens. But again, this is just, you can't put every example up there. But again, when you change the income from 100% and zero to
It
something,
changes things.
so exactly.
Of course
That's
it
what
does.
makes it even harder
I
for
didn't
us.
want to focus on that, so I used this base case. I
Okay.
said that at the beginning, and I don't think this is a reasonable final outcome.
It's an easy one to look at, but it certainly makes it hard to think of all the different variations that we have to look at when setting these awards within.
Of course you're right.
Absolutely.
We just want to stay, look, it's difficult enough to deal with these issues, so I try to stay with as
Makes sense.
simple a case as I can. Jason?
Jason, take a break.
Yeah, I was just going to agree with Pam. I think in previous child support guidelines, we adopted the USDA model, but we made adjustments to that model. So we don't necessarily have to focus on a model and stick exactly with that model. We can make our own adjustments depending on what we learn and what we feel and understand, as we go forward. So it's not set in stone.
Let's take a 10-minute break. It's at 1:25. Let's come back at 1:35. And Dr. Carpenter will land the plane. That's a real